In my recent review of 2024's Werewolves and 2025 Wolfman, I highlighted that when I was younger, I was too afraid to watch highly rated werewolf movies like American Werewolf in London and Howling, both released in 1981. 30 odd years later, I felt compelled to eradicate that innate fear from my childhood and finally watched Howling from Joe Dante, a director I always enjoyed, be it Gremlins, Inner Space, Matinee, Small Soldiers, etc. The story and the title, of course, was adapted from the 1977 horror fiction from Gary Brandner. The screenplay was written by John Sayles, who would go on to make many independent films and written more screenplays, notably The Spiderwick Chronicles, together with Terence H. Winkless. Reading through the storyline of Gary Brandner's original material, Sayles and Winkless upheld the key plot lines and retained the names of the key characters, but gave it a bit of a grit and expanded the world, making Karen White, our protagonist, a news anchor being stalked, instead of housewife who was suffering from the mental trauma of being raped. In the first act, we have Karen baiting her stalker, Eddie Quist, under the watchful surveillance of the news crew and the police. Eddie led Karen into a sleazy porn theater, putting her through some sneaky mental torment before law caught up with him, but the damage to poor Karen had been done. With her career and marriage under jeopardy, Karen was advised by a psychiatrist to join many of his patients in the rural retreat in the woods of Los Angeles in a collective known as the Colony. In the novel, it was a mountain village of Drago where Karen and Bill recluse to get their life back on track after the trauma. Instead, I actually enjoyed this motley crew of characters Doc had amassed, including the supposed nymphomaniac gypsy, Marsha, and a human-lichened mole of a brother. In the time when Karen and Bills was retreating with the Colony, her friends from the news station, Terry and Chris, went on their follow-up on Eddie's background and the link to Lincoln Trophy, going the extra mile to an occultist bookstore, acquiring materials not readily available in public library, as well as something that would come in handy in the final showdown. Terry was the unfortunate collateral as she came to the Colony answering the help of her friend Karen in distress, but met a gruesome demise in the most visceral werewolf attack in this movie. Chris was the real hero of the story in the end, although he was Bill's friend in the novel, rather than the friend of Karen's in the movie. So, the threat of the Colony was going to spread, and Karen was to take upon herself using the news channel as a medium, and with the epilogue, returning antagonist was primed for the sequel, which surprisingly went the other way without the involvement of Dante, Sayles, and Winkless. Coming to think of it, The Howling, with its substantial amount of female nudity and the lichen fornication by the campfire, might not be something young children should watch, even with parental guardians, aside from the horrific werewolf transformation. I truly believed the version of VHS we rented back then had to be thoroughly censored. While Gary Brandner's novels was rooted very much to the theme of infidelity and post-traumatic syndrome of rape victims, which seamlessly Werewolf Attack was used as allegory, the movie, as mentioned before, was much grittier with the stalking aspect and showing the underbelly of a city like Los Angeles. The Colony was also an interesting twist with a scheme to spread the lycanthropy, and with the affluence of a news network, it felt like the threat was on a bigger scope. I suppose with the likes of Piranha and Gremlins, Joe Dante was comfortable to create a story about putting an ensemble in peril, but there was an apparent lack of levity, which I felt Dante liked to add to his movies. Now let's give Rob Bottin his due. An apprentice of Rick Baker who worked with him during the production of Star Wars A New Hope, it was an interesting master versus apprentice with werewolf transformation between the two key movies in 1981. For me, Rick Baker's wondrous work for special effect on that John Landis movie, where one could really feel the agony of David during his transformation, Bottin amplified the scary body shape-shifting to scare the victims in the story as well as us, the audience. Other notable Bottin special effect came in his multiple collaborations with Paul Verhoeven in RoboCop and Total Recall, as well as his works for John Carpenter, with The Thing being the real highlight of his career. A decent cast was amassed for The Howling with Dee Wallace as Karen White, A year before, she was featured as the mother of Drew Barrymore and Henry Thomas in E.T. Extraterrestrial. Her husband during that time, Christopher Stone, played Bill, Karen's husband, and the pair would be featured in another memorable horror flick with Cujo, based on that Stephen King's novel. The likes of Patrick Macnee playing Doc, Slim Pickens as the sheriff, Dante's regular collaborator Belinda Balaski as Terry, Dennis Dugan as Chris were all decent character actors of that time. Even the grand patriarch of the Carradine family, John, played the disillusioned old man Earl Kenton. To end this review, The Howling wanted to be a horror movie with a strong social commentary, much like those David Cronenberg's movies of that time period. I had enjoyed the story, and the performances were good all around, and Rob Bottin gave us a very memorable werewolf transformation. Yet I think American Werewolf in London was a stronger movie and may prove to be timeless comparatively. The Howling is a 7 out of 10 movie for me. I am trying to film more reviews which also reflect my watching schedule, so please like and share and subscribe to my channel. My previous review was on Scott Derrickson's The Gorge, which could be a gem if they focus more on the horror aspects. Considering the price of silver these days, I wonder if authentic silver bullets would be of a premium.